Alok, welcome back to the Ranveer Show.
Pleasure to be here.
You said that sometimes when you're doing a brain surgery, some memories may be missing.
They are missing. And they don't know it's missing.
Computer-brain interfaces here. Does that mean that your biology can also get hacked?
Now, there is a danger. You'll be able to completely influence the brain in many, many ways.
How do you explain the subconscious mind to a 5-year-old?
Everything that has happened in the past, all the events, the hurts, the pains, the traumas, the joys, and the sorrows, they are all in the subconscious mind. One of the problems of humankind is that our brain is always living in the past and the future because of the subconscious. I may know that alcohol is not good for me, but the craving for it is so much. Those chemicals and agents go and stick to those areas of the brain. Now, the brain cannot get stimulated by anything else.
Reality is created by the logical mind, but
Yes.
expectations are created by the emotional mind.
Absolutely. The suffering of all of mankind is purely because of the imbalance between the two. Now, I am hoping that the digital technology, things like neural link, brings about harmony between the lower and the higher brain.
What's the first superpower that computer-brain interfaces will give us?
The most important thing that we see right now is
Dr. Alok Sharma is a neurosurgeon who we've featured on TRS in the past. He's got his own cult audience because his subject matter is always practically important for all of us. Neuroscience is one of those domains of biology that is being researched upon heavily, and neuroscientists all over the world are constantly finding newer secrets of the brain. We're discovering deeper layers of our own mind. Today's episode is about these slightly deeper layers. Of course, we've spoken about meditation. Of course, we've spoken about sleep, neuroplasticity. But this is an attempt to help you understand about the higher states of the brain. What is the human body evolving into next? We came from monkeys, but where are we going? These are the kind of questions that will be answered in this neuroscience special of TRS. It's for anyone who enjoys psychology and brain biology. Features Dr. Alok Sharma on TRS once again. Dr. Alok, welcome back to the Ranveer Show.
pleasure to be here.
Let's dive straight in.
Yeah.
The-
Oh, wait. Before we dive straight in, there's something I want to talk about. I want to share. And it's in context with what happened recently. Your response to everything that happened. In life, we all make mistakes, we make errors, things happen to all of us. Those are things we can't control. However, our response to that is in our hands. And what I want you to know is the way you responded was, in my views, in my opinion, the classic definition of the word equanimity. There is a word in English called equanimity. Equanimity is about being balanced, about being calm, and about being serene in the middle of whatever happens. And I believe that your responses were, a definition of equanimity. They were mature. We never saw you go off the handle. We never saw you criticize anybody. You were apologetic where it had to be. You were, firm where you had to be. So, not just as somebody who has been on your podcast, but as somebody who is your parents' age. I mean, I'm the same age as your parents. As a medical doctor, as a neurosurgeon, as a neuroscientist, as a medical teacher. I've been a medical teacher for 30 years, about 100 students going through us every year. I want you to know that my respect for you is actually enhanced.
Thank you, sir.
And, when I did my podcast with you earlier, because of your age, I always saw you as a kid. Okay, you're well-known in the field, but you're still a kid. Today, I see you with different eyes. I see that you have grown and matured. So, as in that capacity, that my respect, my closeness, my affection for you has not changed a little bit. In fact, it's just got enhanced.
Thank you.
Even from that generation, right? At no point did anybody think of anything that happened in anything that is negative. They were always supportive, caring of everything that you've done and everything that you did. So I just wanted you to know that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Means a lot. All I'll say is I really enjoy my job. I really enjoy dissecting knowledge, and I really enjoy meeting people like yourself where I can extract that knowledge for the sake of the world, but also obviously for the sake of my own curiosity. So I don't know if you're familiar with this show called Black Mirror, but it's a horror show without ghosts. The villain or the ghost is the dark aspect of technology. So they try highlighting technologies that already exist around us or are currently being developed in the present, and how those technologies will affect human life. And one of the hot topics within Black Mirror, as well as the show called Severance, is what we call the computer brain interface. Now, sir, you're a brain surgeon, but I have hung out with you as well. So I know that you're a student when it comes to the subject of neuroscience. Um, you're already working with stem cell therapies. I think that you're one of those doctors who's on the cutting edge of medical tech. My first question to you is related to this computer brain interface angle. Uh, I think it's going to be made completely public within 5 years' time. How long have you been a brain surgeon for?
Since 1992.
Okay.
So
30 years.
30 years, yeah.
Did you ever think of this reality where technology will make its way into the biology of the brain?
Well, actually, that's a very interesting question because I've already done this. So, in the late 1990s, I was the first to do something called motor cortex stimulation for intractable pain, where we took electrodes and implanted the electrodes onto the motor cortex and then connected it to a pacemaker which was below, and that stimulated the motor cortex and removed the most difficult and intractable pain that there was.
What is the motor cortex?
The motor cortex is a part of the brain that actually controls our movements. But when the motor cortex gets stimulated, it suppresses the pain, And so there was, pain which would not respond to anything. We were able to do that. So my first experience was in implanting electrodes on the brain. Subsequently, I implanted a lot of electrodes for patients in coma. So we have patients in intractable coma who are just unconscious in a vegetative state. And what we would do is we would take electrodes and put it implanted in the cervical spine and again stimulate the brain so that if there was any possibility of recovery, they would recover. So I've already worked with this.
Did it work with them?
Yeah, so it did work. The pain, it helped significantly. Then in the coma, we had some patients who did improve. And, one of them was actually Ramnath Parkar. He was a well-known cricketer. He used to open with Gavaskar. He had a very severe accident and injury, and I did his stimulation operation. In fact, the whole Indian cricket team had a benefit match just to be able to support him for that.
Okay.
So I've already done this. But when I was doing this, the technology was not as refined. The electrodes were larger. The equipment was a little, what it was 15, 20 years ago. But now with everything getting, microized, smaller, more easy to control. Earlier we had to, have wires coming out and stimulators. Now you can do a whole lot of this wirelessly. I believe the future will be an interface of technology with the brain, because at the end, the human brain is also, one of the most fascinating, brilliant, computer-like creations that nature has ever evolved.
Yeah. I'm an engineer, you're a doctor. I see the world in terms of systems, flowcharts, and perhaps the flow of electricity and power within those systems. That's what a computer is. It's a flow of electricity. That's not exactly how the human body and brain operate. Even though it's a very complex system, even though it has its own form of electricity. Do you visualize a future where all of us in this room will actually have chips implanted in our brains?
All right. So the brain also functions through transmission of electricity.
Is this the basis of computer brain interfaces?
Partly.
Okay.
Partly. So what you have to understand is that in the brain, everything is equilibrium. Okay, everything is balanced. For every one action, there is a counter action. So the brain is in a constant state of awareness. And then when you decide, I have to do this, now to do this, the other things have to be suppressed, right? And then you focus on this one thing. Now, using electrical interface, it's possible to enhance or suppress. And sometimes it's not just stimulation. Sometimes you want to inhibit something, and sometimes you want to stimulate something. So there are three ways to do it. You can do it chemically through drugs, okay? You can do it biologically from the work I do, that is using stem cells. You give stem cells and then you stimulate parts of the brain, or you could do it electrically. And I think the future with chips getting smaller, we'll be able to enhance our ability to do things. We'll become more efficient. I believe it is the future.
Okay. What's the first practical superpower that these computer brain interfaces will give us? Because I know that Neuralink, which is Elon Musk's organization, their first game is to help people who are dealing with any kind of neurological issue. Once they get past chapter 1 of their journey, I am pretty sure they're going to go into some kind of brain enhancement or ability enhancement product when it comes to those computer brain interfaces. So because you're a brain surgeon, my question to you is, what's the first likely superpower that we will gain as human beings?
So, like you said, first is about disease and disorders.
Yes.
The most important thing that we see right now is paralysis or stroke. So when somebody is paralyzed, half the body is not moving, and by using this, we are likely to be able to give movement back. That's one hope. Also, there are several other diseases. Uh, in adults, for example, in dementia or Alzheimer's, there's a likelihood that by stimulating various parts of the brain, we'll be able to enhance the memory. And we may not be able to improve their condition, but we may be able to slow down the deterioration. Now, when it comes to regular people who don't have a medical problem, what is the future for us? So the future for us is going to be in the ability. So each one of us first have to, each one of us is different. Each one of us has different skills. Like you were in a class, maybe somebody stood first, okay, but that person may not have been good in sports. Or somebody stood 10th, maybe he was a good cricketer, but he couldn't paint. And somebody stood maybe 20th who was a great painter or a musician, but could not play games or study. So each one of us is different. So today, the concept of what is normal is being removed, and people are being looked at either as neurotypical or neurodiverse. This is especially with relation to conditions like autism and intellectual disability. We are saying, don't look at anybody as being less than. Somebody is typical like us and somebody is different or exceptional like the others. So the enhancement, one of the things that we may work on is memory, right? We might be able to, I'm not saying I'm for it, okay, but it may be likely that we may be implanting chips that may enhance our attention, focus, and our ability to memorize. Now, that may not be needed today. See, times have changed. When we were students, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have computers, we had nothing. So we had to memorize. Today, the need for memory is not there as much, right? However, it is likely that by doing this, the ability to be able to take on and handle large volumes of data may be improved. Okay, that's one of the first things that people may be interested in. And I believe that what is needed is a combination of all of this, and that the traditional systems of education now, the traditional systems of evaluating, are all going to go in the dustbin soon. Okay, because you don't need the many things that you were taught earlier, you may not need now. However, there's a lot of information that needs to be processed to, for future disruptive technologies, for being able to see the world differently, and both will need it. Those who are apparently doing well in school, okay, and those who are apparently not doing well, because those who are not doing well actually have a different level of brilliance, okay? And that is a brilliance that changes the world. The people who've changed the world are not the people who stood first in class. They were the people who didn't do so well in class, but they brought about technology that changed the world. And so suddenly you're going to find that this digital interface is going to bridge the gap between the two, between seeing the world in its wider, larger context and, seeing the world in a focused context. That is where the bridging will happen.
Backbenchers are more likely to do well.
They actually change the world. I can give you a whole list of some of the greatest inventions, and none of those people were people who were
Great at school.
No, yeah, all of.
Yeah, I think as much as I respect someone who does well in school, I think that for many of them, not all of them, but for many of them, it's almost like it's a lifelong weight that they have to carry on their shoulders, because they're so used to doing everything perfectly that it kind of, at least in my experience, I've noticed it takes away from their risk appetite later on in life. And eventually, if you really want to break out from the pack, it's about taking risks. It's about gambling just a little bit, calculated gambles.
Absolutely, and there's a neuroscience to it. And again, so we like I said, I treat a lot of kids with autism, and we do their brain scans. So we are finding the medial temporal area. These are the areas responsible for memory, for emotions and stuff like that. So when we do the scans, we find that in kids with autism, their cerebellum, their small brain, and the medial temporal areas are hypometabolic, are not working as well. You can see it. It's a color scan, so you can see that it's not working. However, what we have found is that other parts of the brain are working more than normal. Okay, they have an ability to see things that we cannot see. Okay, so there are two parts. There is what is called the parieto-occipital area. The occipital is the visual area. And there is the frontal area, the area that does the executive thinking.
Gotcha.
So these people can see things, like Einstein. Einstein, it is known that he had autism, okay? But he saw, the way he saw light, the way he, created E is equal to MC square, he saw things that no scientist had seen before. So that's what I'm saying. We need both. And I believe that, the technology like Neuralink is going to bridge that gap. What if we had both? I mean, that's my question.
Gotcha. Wow. Okay. So on the other end of the spectrum is the strength of the backbenchers, who can see society for what it is not, or for what it truly is.
Yes.
That's why they're the ones who are more likely to become entrepreneurs.
Absolutely.
Because what is entrepreneurship? It's 0 to 1. It's creating something that doesn't exist.
Yes.
Got it. So this is the neuroscience of why backbenchers are more suited to entrepreneurship.
Absolutely.
Versus frontbenchers who are suited for a flourishing corporate career.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
One set follows the rules well, one set breaks the rules well. The world needs both.
No.
All of us lie somewhere on the spectrum.
Yes.
Neuralink is likely to give everyone the strengths of both sides.
Perfectly said. You put it in a nutshell beautifully.
Okay.
Yeah.
So every rich person in the 2030s is going to be a superhuman.
Yes. Maybe.
That's the practical truth. Whoever can afford early Neuralink will become...
It's very interesting. The person who created Neuralink, Elon Musk himself had autism. He had something called Asperger's. That's a high-functioning autism. And you see what this man has created. When in the 80s, when I learned driving, if somebody told me one day cars would drive without petrol, it was like science fiction. One man did it, okay? He's talking of sending missions to Mars. He created Neuralink. So he himself is a classic example of somebody who may not have been a topper in his class, but see what he's accomplished. He's a living example.
Okay. There's an obvious kind of scary question, which is also related to cybersecurity, because we've had some cybersecurity experts on the show. Because we're talking about computer-brain interfaces here, effectively your biology will be linked to a computer system. So if that computer system gets hacked, does that mean that your biology can also get hacked? What's your opinion as a brain surgeon?
All right. So the way I see, Neuralink and this interface between the brain and the computer, it's going to be more things that will be done to our brain rather than things being taken out from our brain. So things like our memory, our emotions. At this point, it is very difficult for any form of technology to extract it for the simple reason that it's not located in one region. Although there are areas focused on memory, but our things are spread out over a rather wide area. And a lot of these things are in the subconscious. A lot of these things are abstract. They are divided because the brain functions to different layers. There are layers and layers of functioning. To be able to extract this information, I can't see science doing it right now. So right now the interface is what the technology will give to the brain rather than what it will take out from the brain right now.
Yeah. The logic of this, based on what you're saying, is that memories and personality are stored all over the
Yeah.
physical structure of the brain. So first, we're going to have to find a technology that's able to scan
Yes.
the entire brain, which is a very complex structure. We've not actually been able to map out
Yeah.
the whole neurological pattern of any human being, I believe, until like
It's
today.
not individual. You can't. You can make out. So you can do scans. You can do. There's something called functional MRI scans. There's something called PET CT scans where you can make out which parts of the brain are working when and how. All right. But to be able to extract what information is there, I can't see, and I'm not saying it won't happen. I mean, anything is possible, where that information will be extractable.
Gotcha. But you're saying that from the computer, you will be able to influence the workings
Lots
of
of
the
things.
brain.
You'll be able to completely, influence the brain in many, many ways. Now, there is a danger because then you don't know how, depending on who does it, where it is done, how you're going to influence, at what age are you going to influence. Doing it to adults is one thing, doing it to children is another, and then you might want to influence an entire group or class of people for a particular point of view. So there are potential dangers in all kinds of technology. For example, our brain, has got a covering brain that's called the cerebral cortex, which we call the cold or the human brain. And there is a deeper brain, which we call the hot brain, which is a more reptilian and what is called a paleo-mammalian brain. So there is a hot brain inside and there is a cold brain on top. So the way the nervous system has evolved, so life started on Earth with as single cells, like amoeba, single cells, and then those cells multiplied, and then you had organism. In the earlier stage, then when it became multiple cells, now these cells had to be controlled. So the nervous system was created. Initially, it was a neural net, and it was on the outside. And then as animals evolved, when you come to the earthworm, you'll see that the nerve, I don't know whether in school you dissected the earthworm. In our time, we had to dissect. There's a spinal cord in the center. Okay, so the earthworm has just one spinal cord, and there's a ring on top. All right. And now this whole nervous system gradually kept on evolving to become the brain. Now, in all of us, the lowest part of our brain is a reptilian brain. It is exactly like that of a lizard. Exactly. All right. Above that is something called a paleo-mammalian brain, which is exactly like that of a dog or a horse or a lion. And above that is a human brain. So we have 3 layers of brains. All right. When anybody, whether it's in politics or whether it's in religion or whether it's nationality, in any way, what Hitler did or what any leaders of the past have done is you can actually directly reach out to the lower brains in people, because the lower brain, the reptilian brain is about the moment. It does whatever. It's only about food, hunger, taste, living, stuff like that. The higher brain, the paleo, has some degree of awareness, some degree of emotion, like a dog, has some degree of emotions and stuff. Now, that has not changed in us. So deep inside us, we still have animal brains. The higher brain controls this. Now, it is possible by the way you communicate for people to reach out to others' animal brains. And that is what leads to what is called a herd mentality. That is what leads to people getting together and creating problems or situations or fighting amongst each other on different grounds.
Mob mentality.
The mob mentality. So mob mentality is all about the reptilian and the mammalian brain getting hacked. And that cuts off the higher brain. All right. So it's happening by words already. It's happening by language already. In fact, they say language is our greatest asset. It's also actually the biggest villain because people use words and language to sway entire mobs, So it's already happening. Now imagine if you could do it with a digital interface, how powerful that would be. Okay.
So effectively, the reptilian brain is still a part of your own human
Yes.
brain today.
Yeah, absolutely.
And through psychological conditioning of different kinds that society can inflict on your own human existence, you can influence a human being's reptilian brain.
Absolutely.
And I think a very practical place that we see this happening is in the world of politics.
Yes.
Which is why political speeches have to be extremely simple and direct.
Yes.
When Trump got elected for the first time, communication skill coaches attributed the words he chose to use in his rallies as a key factor in him winning votes, because he said some deeply offensive things and he used extremely simple words. So effectively, Donald Trump has hacked the reptilian brains.
Absolutely.
I'm going to twist this whole conversation now.
Yeah.
How many brain surgeries have you performed?
Thousands.
Okay.
I've lost track. Yeah.
I remember when we spoke on our first ever podcast, you said that sometimes when you're doing your brain surgery, you almost feel like you're cutting through someone's life's memories. Because sometimes when they come out of the brain surgery, some memories may be missing.
No, they are missing. Yeah.
They are missing.
And they don't know that it's missing.
Which testifies to the fact that memories are stored all over your brain, right? My question to you, sir, is physically speaking, where is the subconscious mind? And the second adjacent question is the subconscious mind even a physical entity, or is it a theme from the world of spiritualism and psychology?
Okay, that's a brilliant question. So what you have to understand is the brain, like every other part of our body or like every part of nature, has a dual face. There's a god called Janus who's got two heads. One head looks forward, one head looks backwards. That's why the month January is named after Janus. Because in January you look back at the year that went and you look ahead at the year that happened. Now, the human brain does exactly that. There are two parts of the human brain. One part where it looks after itself. It is self-focused, introspective. It is about self-survival. There's another part that integrates this with the environment, with society, with family and friends. So there is a part that looks in and there's a part that looks out. Okay. Now this happens everywhere. Each cell of our body, each cell is actually looking to survive in its own self, but it's also looking how it will interface with other cells. And so every part of our body is like that, but the brain in particular. Now, how is this in terms of the hardware and the software? All right. So humans have a brain that is able to look at the consequences of its action. So when like you do something, what will be the outcome? There is what is good, bad, right, wrong, choices, consequences. This is all what the cerebral cortex or the higher brain does. And then, like we discussed, there is a lower brain that deals only with food, hunger, thirst, anger, emotion, right? So there are two parts. The lower brain is inward looking. It is about self-preservation.
Ego.
It's about it's ego and more. It's pure. If you're hungry, it wants food. It doesn't care where you get the food from. If you're thirsty, it wants water. So whatever it wants it and it wants it now. All right. So this is the inward looking brain. And there's the outward looking brain. Now, if you see evolution, and there is a lot that has been written on this, what has happened is normally when things evolve, whatever is lower, is controlled by whatever is higher. Normally there's a control, For example, the spinal cord is under control of the lower brain. If there's an instruction given, the spinal cord doesn't have a choice whether to if you say I have to walk, the spinal cord can't say, no, I will not let you. It'll pass that signal. It doesn't have a control. Whereas in the brain, the midbrain I'm talking about, the mammalian or reptilian brain, this actually, it may not block, but there's a conflict between the two. All right.
Between what?
Between logic, reason, and emotion. There's a constant conflict. I mean, the suffering of all of mankind is purely because of the imbalance between the two. All right. So
Suffering happens when reality doesn't meet expectations.
yeah,
That's philosophy.
yeah,
So basically, reality is created by the logical mind, but
yes,
expectations are created by the emotional mind.
absolutely,
Hmm.
perfect. Okay,
So
perfectly said.
your own reptilian brain
Yeah,
wants the world to be ideal, wants everything that you wish to happen.
yeah,
Then your higher brain processes the reality of the world around you.
yeah,
And when those two outcomes don't match, that's what creates frustration for you.
yes, yeah.
Okay.
So that creates anger, and that very often leads to almost everything, including whether it's addictions or whether it is uh, behavior that is not completely correct as far as society's norms go. So all of this is a conflict between two brains. Both of them are our brains, okay, but there's a conflict between these two brains, and of course, the best way out is something that you practice yourself, and that is meditation, okay, because meditation is the only tool, okay, that brings about harmony between the lower and the higher brain. It's the only tool available. Now I am hoping that the digital technology, things like Neuralink, may be able to do what meditation does.
But so this harmony between those two brains means what, biologically speaking?
Let's take an addiction, all right. I may know that alcohol is not good for me. I may know that, some other, taking other drugs is not good for me. But the craving for it is so much, your higher brain is telling you it's not good. Okay. It completely overrules that, right? So this is all basically electrical transmission and neurochemicals, that are playing with each other. Right. So what does meditation do? When you're meditating, what are you doing? Right. When you're meditating, uh, there is a silencing of the mind, all right? And the brain waves. So just to let you know, we have brain waves in us, right? So there are different levels of brain waves. So when you're concentrating on something, there's actually something called gamma waves. Okay, that is when, say, you're reading a book or you're trying to study something. So your gamma waves are there.
Like even right now.
No, this is different. So right now we are in the beta wave frame. So when you're talking to somebody, see, when you're right now we're not concentrating. When you're reading a book, let's say you're doing research on a topic, right? That time it is gamma waves. When you're talking to somebody, it is beta waves. When you're giving a speech or a lecture, right now our beta waves are completely active. Okay, you understand the difference between concentration and interaction. Now, let us say we took a break after this, and we just went out for coffee. Now our alpha waves will go into rhythm. So alpha waves is the little more
Chilled
relaxed,
out.
little more relaxed, where you aren't you're not sleeping, but you're relaxed alpha. Let's say after this you want to take a nap, then you go into what is called the theta wave. Theta wave is a wave which is the way you're feeling just before you sleep. Okay, that's theta, which by the way is also the way when you're driving long distances on a highway. Actually your theta waves get activated. That is why there are accidents, because you're sort of pre-sleep. If you're driving on the Atal Setu, for some time you start feeling, actually, because your theta waves are activated. And the last, when you go into sleep, it is delta waves.
Deep
right?
sleep.
Deep sleep is delta waves, deep sleep. Now, when you're meditating, it's your alpha and theta waves that are active. Any form of meditation, and there are hundreds of papers to show that. So your alpha wave is the wave when you are relaxing but alert. See, the beauty of meditation, it doesn't put you to sleep. It calms you, but your mind is still alert. That is alpha. Okay. And the theta waves is the calming. It's silencing out, the distractions. So the beauty of meditation is these waves. Okay. Now, again, I believe that, interfacing the brain with computers might be able to bring us into a state. So, I know how many hours you spend meditating. I mean, you have a phenomenal spiritual side to you, but that's not humanly possible. I mean, for everybody to do. I mean, in today's world with this, how many people can spend an hour meditating in the morning, right? So sometimes we have to use technology. So this is, I'll give you another example. All our diseases and our problems, whether it's cardiac, neuro, everything else, is primarily because of lack of oxygen, okay, in our body, hypoxia, ischemia. Ideally, when you do pranayam, when you do yoga, what are you doing in yoga? You're deep breathing oxygen, okay? And if you do it long enough, the oxygen is going under pressure. Now, that is helping you heal and prevent disease. But can everybody do pranayam for half an hour, 1 hour? No. So what do? We take medical technology. We have in a hospital hyperbaric oxygen chambers. You must be aware of hyperbaric oxygen. A lot of people are using it for anti-aging. What does hyperbaric oxygen do? It pushes oxygen under pressure. So in 1 hour, so it's easier for people to go into a chamber and breathe oxygen than to do 1 hour of pranayam. 1 hour of pranayam is difficult, okay? I've tried it. I can't do more than 15 minutes, okay?
What if you do the pranayam inside the oxygen chamber?
I think that would be like a different level only. So have you understood?
Yeah.
What our natural systems, what our ancient traditions are saying, what that pranayam is good for health. People can't do it. So now we're using technology to do exactly what pranayam is doing. Ideally, meditation is a tool everybody should be doing. But if you can't do it, what if technology did that for you? What if you could create alpha and theta waves in the brain?
Gotcha. Can we speak a little bit more about these waves?
Yeah.
When you say that the brain is vibrating in alpha or gamma, I am assuming that there have been scientific studies where they measured the outputs of
absolutely.
the brain.
Lots of them. Hundreds of papers. Yeah.
Then categorize those outputs into alpha, beta, gamma, theta, and delta.
Yeah.
Right? Now, for the end user who's listening to this podcast from a practical perspective, what's your advice as a doctor?
Alpha and theta is when you want to relax, wind down, but you can't go through life living in alpha and theta. If you have to study, okay, if you have to do a job, if you have to work on a project, if somebody has to do coding, when somebody is doing coding, an IT professional, he has to be in a total gamma. He has to be focusing on what he's doing. If he's trying to do a programming, or if, let's say, as a surgeon, okay, if I'm operating on the brain, I can't be in alpha and theta. I have to be in gamma. That is concentrated. When I'm talking, let's say I'm taking a lecture for students, I can't be in alpha and theta. I have to be in beta. Okay, because have you understood?
Yes.
So we need all of these. What happens is today's life, everybody is either concentrating on doing something or in this mode, and so we don't take the breaks for alpha. We don't take the theta. So you need to have a balance of both.
Okay, that's okay. So gamma. Okay, so your
concentration.
brain is vibrating in the gamma state when you're focused.
Focused on job.
I would also assume highly productive individuals are able to stay in that gamma state much longer.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah. So that is attention. So your front benchers, they are the more gamma because they can concentrate.
Gotcha. Is there any way to improve your brain's ability to stay in the gamma state for long?
Starting first, sleep. Okay, because they found that unless you have had 8 hours of full sleep, your attention concentration areas are lesser. Second, exercise. Again, they found that if you exercise regularly, when you're giving attention to things, you can do it better. Then diet, of course, makes a big difference.
For your ability for your brain to stay in its gamma state.
Wow. Also, although it's not good, but things like caffeine, coffee and tea will help you, focus longer. Alcohol will put you in your alpha and theta state. So these things help. Caffeine actually helps you to focus more on the things that you have to do. So then again, meditation is something that's again very useful because I'm going to keep coming to meditation because there is nothing better than meditation for actually all of these things, And like they say that when you are completely focused on a job, when you're completely into it, you sort of get into that it can become for you a meditative state as well. Yeah. When you're not doing it as a job, when you're completely, and when it's just a part of you, when you and your work become one, it's not something you are doing. I like to put it like that. Your head, your heart, and your hands are all in sync, the 3 H's.
Wow. Okay. What a fascinating conversation. Okay. I have to go back to the subconscious mind. How do you explain the subconscious mind to a 5-year-old? What is it in the first place? Because I've actually had 10 different people give me 10 different explanations on the show, but I would like to hear the brain surgeon talking about the subconscious mind.
All right. So, again, there are layers in the brain. what is the conscious mind? Okay. The conscious mind does the following activities. The first, the conscious mind has memory. Second, the conscious mind has intelligence, the ability to, do things. Third, the conscious mind controls body movements. Right? Okay, if I had to give a simple example, if the conscious mind is on the stage, a play that is happening or a music concert, whatever's happening at the back of the stage is the subconscious mind. So there is a lot happening in the background that is letting you do all these things which that your conscious mind is doing. All right. Now, in the subconscious mind, what all is there? So there is a huge lot of data. Okay. Now, this data is of everything that has happened in the past. Okay. So whatever has happened in childhood, everything that has happened, in particular, the relationship with the parents. They found that, our relationship with our parents is one of the fundamental programming of our subconscious brain. Okay. And then all the events, the hurts, the pains, the traumas, the joys, and the sorrows, they are all in the subconscious mind. They are at the back. You don't see them every day, but they are there. And they are influencing what is happening to your into your conscious mind. So your conscious mind, right now, whatever you're thinking, our conscious mind is active. But at the back end, there is a huge lot of data which is now controlling what is happening in the front end. All right. Now,
This is the psychology-based explanation, right?
there's the psychology. Now there's the neuroscience-based explanation. So now when do you get to see your subconscious? It's difficult to see your subconscious, but the time when you really get a sense of it is in dreams. Okay. Because in your dreams, a lot of your subconscious starts playing up. Now, with regard to dreams, there are two views. There was the old Freudian view, which actually looks at it as just repressed emotions and, it's a more psychological view. But today, there is a more neuroscience view, a neuroscience perspective to what is happening in our dreams. So basically, in our daytime, in our awake time, sorry, not daytime, the brain is working. There's so much happening. There is emotions, there is interaction, there is changes, there is a lot of stuff happening. Now, in the night when you sleep, housekeeping needs to be done because whatever's happened in the day, the subconscious mind actually takes all that and stacks it, stores it. There are different parts of the brain. There's something called the hippocampus, which is, it's like a seahorse shape which stacks memory, literally shelves the memory. There's the amygdala that's concerned with raw emotions and fear and everything else. There's the hypothalamus that controls the pituitary gland that is, concerned with a lot of our emotional stuff. This whole thing is called the limbic system. So what is happening is in the night, all that is getting sorted.
So through the day, your limbic system is getting overloaded just through your experiences of the day.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, in the night, a lot of this has to be either got rid of or it has to be stored. Because in the night, the brain has deleted that. Okay. And so what happens in the night, again, our sleep has got two parts. There is, I did a podcast with you on sleep. There is the non-REM part and there is the REM part. So, both have dreams, but it's the REM sleep, the dreams in the REM sleep, which is what we remember, which again, the key part of the subconscious is actually the emotional content. So if you see your dreams, you'll notice they're always emotionally charged. There is always some emotion tagged to it, Also, our dreams are more visual, less sound. You'll actually see images. It's things in motion, but there's always an emotion, right? And of course, now dreams is a separate topic all by itself. What it means.
Okay, can I have a go at it?
Yeah.
Until this point, just to be sure that I'm with you.
Yeah.
So effectively, you go through experiences throughout your life, but also every single day. Now, all that is cumulatively stored in what we theoretically call the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind originally is a theory from the world of psychology.
Yes.
it's basically what goes into forming your own human personality and character, and it's heavily dependent on your relationship with your parents, all your life's experiences, etc.
Yeah.
So you'll hear a lot of modern day psychologists and life coaches saying, hey, program your subconscious mind. I think what they're effectively trying to do is feed in positive memory, feed in positive data, feed in positive content, so that in that scrambled egg of memories that you're making, you put in something tasty, something tastier. Because eventually, whatever goes on in your subconscious mind will determine the actions of your conscious mind.
Absolutely.
So
Very well said. Yeah.
the ability to work hard or go for that big business that you wanted to open or take that risk in life or ask out that girl, those are decisions of your conscious mind, which are affected heavily by all your memories, your parental relationship, the content you're watching, etc., etc. But in terms of the biology, as of now, we know that yes, the limbic system heavily contributes to affecting your subconscious mind daily
Through its emotions. Yeah.
through its emotions.
Yeah.
And every single day, your limbic system is getting highly stimulated. When you sleep well at night, your limbic system processes all this and showcases it to your conscious brain as emotionally charged dreams.
Absolutely.
Effectively, coming back to the subconscious mind, I don't think we fully understood the physical nature of the subconscious mind yet.
No, so the subconscious mind is not in a spot. Like, see, our speech area, I can say there's something called the Broca speech area. It's in the left side of the brain. So you can say speech area, one part, right? Our say visual area is the occipital lobe. You can say occipital lobe there, all right? The subconscious mind derives its data or stores its data in all of this. Okay, so you can't isolate, you can't take a spot and say this is the subconscious mind. I mean, in other words, there is no anatomical location for the subconscious mind. There is an anatomical location for other things like our executive decision making, our intelligence is in the frontal lobe, our sensations are in the parietal lobe. Below that is the thalamus, which is also a sensory relay station. So all sensations go through that. So basically, all our sensations go through a sensory relay station called the thalamus, which then sends it to the brain.
Gotcha.
All except smell. That's why smell is a very powerful smell. Smell is the only sensation that bypasses the thalamus and goes straight to the brain. So smell is a very, very powerful sensation that is completely ignored in neuroscience, but it's very powerful.
That's why perfumes play a love and romance.
Yes, play a big role.
The practical question for you, sir, is how does one program the subconscious mind according to you now?
So the subconscious mind gets programmed by what has happened in the conscious mind. So you can't get into the subconscious mind and program it. You can see that the inputs to the subconscious mind through your conscious mind are appropriate, which you just said. So if you're going to have happy experiences, if you're going to look at everything from the positive side of life, all right, then over a period of time, those things will go into your subconscious. So the subconscious gets its feed from the conscious, but it gets stored there for a long time without you even knowing. So right now we are only aware of what's happening in your conscious mind. You're not aware because the subconscious mind has got data stored from since you were a kid.
My response to the same question is that this is the actual biology behind, hey, you're an average of the 5 people you hang out with the most.
Absolutely.
Or, hey, your parents' personality reflects in your own nature.
Yes.
Or, hey, you are an outcome of the content you consume.
Yes.
This is
completely.
So all these aspects of life program your subconscious mind into operating your conscious mind and taking your life to where it's meant to go. Okay. So obviously, if you watch a lot of motivational content, if you watch a lot of content around growth, that's who you'll become. And if you watch content that's simply based on entertainment, perhaps it has its place in life. But if it's empty entertainment all the time, it probably leads to some kind of emptiness in terms of your conscious mind's actions. Perhaps.
No, it's very true. I'll just give you an example. So when we were in school, we had no environmental sciences. Like when we studied, I think when you were in school, you had EVS, right?
Yeah.
So there is a big difference between my approach to the environment and my daughter's. Okay. She is so conscious about everything environmental. And we are not conscious at all because in school we never studied it. So in our subconscious, there is no environment consciousness. All right. Whereas in your generation, it is.
Yeah.
It's because you were taught that at school. All right.
Another surface level example of this exact thing. We had Suman Agarwal ma'am, who's one of the country's top nutritionists. She said that the country that deals with the least number of obesity issues is Japan. And the corollary is that Japanese students are put through a nutrition course in their first and second grade.
Yeah.
All school
I've
curriculum
heard about that.
includes nutrition as a core concept.
So that's all the subconscious programming.
Okay.
So the answer to your question is you can't reach the subconscious directly. You have to get to it through your conscious.
I think this is perhaps the most important parenting lesson out there as well. That you can literally program your kid into being a type A personality.
Absolutely.
Okay. Heading into the final section of the episode, the climax, which is the internet's all-time hottest topic. Emotions. Especially during a period of humankind where emotional instability is the norm. While people say that, yes, mental health was an issue even in the 90s, we just didn't call it out. I do think that the nature of urban society in the modern day, and from a neuroscience perspective, the way dopamine systems are a little messed up in the modern day, lead to mental health issues and emotional instability. Now, starting from these kind of basics, can we take the conversation right up till what the future of emotions is for mankind once computer-brain interfaces become a thing? In the last section, we spoke about the subconscious mind. So I think the audience has loosely understood the subconscious mind. My question to you first and foremost, sir, is what are emotions?
So emotions is a subset of the functioning of the brain. So just like there is memory which is stored, there is cognition or intellectual functioning or executive actions. There is also emotions. The thing about emotions is that there is a feeling attached to it. Normally, people in general talk of emotions as being connected to the heart, but the heart really has no emotions. All the emotions are in the limbic system. However, they are connected to what is happening in the higher brain. Now, love is of different types. And according to me, there is only one real love on the planet, and that is that of a mother for her child. And the reason for that is that it is unconditional. Okay.
Not father to child?
It is, mother to child is a very different. Fathers love their kids as much, but a mother having kept the child in the womb for 9 months has a very different subconscious acceptance of the child. The difference between a father's love and a mother's love is a mother's love is unconditional. Father's love is as much, but there are expectations. Mothers tend to have less and I see this all the time because I deal with children with autism. These are children who cannot speak. These are children who cannot read and write, who cannot go to school, who have hyperactive behavior. They have head banging. They have all kinds of things. And I've seen the unconditionality of that love is a different level, right? So the definition of love is its unconditionality. Everything else is conditional, all right? There is a give and there is a take. So, it may not be said, but it is implied in every other relationship. Now, when it comes to emotions, I'll start. There are different levels of emotions again. So I will deal with the most fundamental one. That is that between a man and a woman, or between a boy and a girl, an emotional love or romantic love or a relationship. I was just classifying it. So this is one. The second is financial. Okay, people have money, don't have money. The third is success. People have success, people don't have success. So there are different situations which are emotionally connected. So romantic relationships are, money is, work is, and all of this leads to sadness or happiness. Now, the thing is, in the brain itself, there is an area that is referred to as the pleasure area. And there's another area which is called the pain area, but it's actually not a pain area, it's an unpleasure area. And these can be stimulated. Even animals have it. So a famous Russian scientist, Pavlov, he actually stimulated. You can put an electrode into a rat's pleasure area, and the rat will, continue wanting that to the extent of not taking food, and for the pain area, he will do the exact opposite. So we actually have areas in the brain that get triggered by various things. So there's an electrical trigger. There are also chemical triggers. There is dopamine, there is serotonin, there is acetylcholine, there is norepinephrine, there is histamine. There are various neurochemicals in the brain that are also responsible for this. Now, why are people unhappy? Okay, fundamentally, what is it that makes people unhappy? And so, I could divide them into just a couple of reasons. And in fact, addiction has to do with this, because when you take things that cause addiction, those chemicals and agents go and stick to those areas of the brain. Now, the brain cannot get stimulated by anything else. The pleasure area only gets stimulated by the things you are addicted to. So that explains addiction, because when the pleasure areas are now only one thing is taken control over them, now nothing else gives you pleasure. And that is the cause for addiction. So in other words, in the brain, there are these two areas. So happiness is actually neurochemistry. Okay. And it's, so neurobiology and neurochemistry, both combined.
Like, how would you explain happiness to something that's never felt emotions?
Okay. No, so when this area is triggered, and it has, dopamine is a very important part of that. You just have a feel, there's this feel good. There are times when things happen, you just feel good. It may happen that you've done a great podcast and you just feel good after that. And there may be times you've done a podcast and you're not feeling so good, So there is a part of the brain that gets triggered. Now, different things, different events, different circumstances, different people actually trigger your pleasure areas, and conversely the opposite, right? So for the brain, by the way, they are the same. The brain does not make a distinction between the pleasure and the pain areas. For them, it's just two parts. Okay, we are the ones that either feel good or don't feel good, right? So that is the distinction. But the fundamental, when you analyze it from a neurobiological point of view, why is it that people are unhappy? Okay, so one of the reasons is that our brain, because of what is happening in the subconscious mind, doesn't remain in the present moment. Okay, it is either, because of what has happened in the past, either there is a constant triggering of things from the past that make you unhappy and trigger the unpleasure areas, okay, or there are fears about what will happen in the future, which are also connected to what has happened in the past, and so lower animals actually, who don't have a complicated brain like us, are in the moment. They just live in the moment. Okay, there is no past for them, there is no future for them. So one of the problems of humankind is that our brain doesn't let us be still in the moment. It's always living in the past or the present, again, because of the subconscious,
Past
not
or
the
the future.
conscious. Past and the future, yeah. Again, it's the subconscious which is now, not letting your conscious mind be in this moment. That is reason one. The reason two is a constant gap between what you have and what you want. So humankind, there is a constant, you want something and you don't have it, and so you're unhappy. Now this could be material possessions, it could be things that you do, it could be emotional pursuits, it could be whatever. And then I often ask myself, if it was that simple, then when you get it, you should be happy, right? I mean, so, and then I realized that what happens is that the goalpost keeps shifting. So a person who doesn't have a car might be happy with a simple small car, But the problem is when he gets the small car, he's now looking at the mid-size car, okay? And when he gets the mid-size car, he's looking for a high-end car. And when he has the high-end car, he's looking for something even better. And I remember Osho, Rajneesh, when he was spiritual guru, but when he died, I believe he had some 80 plus Rolls Royce cars. because his dream was to have one Rolls Royce car for every day of the year. And then I realized that, well, if a guru was not happy with 80 Rolls Royce cars, then obviously, you know, material possessions, this trying to bridge this gap doesn't work. The other thing is spirituality and meditation, which says accept what you have. That's the other side. Whatever you have, you accept it. Well, that's easier said than done in today's world, because today's world is a materialistic world.
Yeah. I have a bit of a philosophical interjection at this point. So there's a story about someone who went up to the Buddha and said, Buddha, I want happiness. So the Buddha responds by saying, remove the I and you've removed ego, remove the want and you've removed desire. What you're left with is happiness. And this is
Very
effectively the
interesting.
philosophy behind the neuroscience you just explained.
Yeah. And but I have a simple solution for that. I mean, a simple solution so there is the spiritual side, there's the emotional side, and there is the material side, right? So I did something interesting. What I did was, when I realized that there is no end, that no matter what you have, you are still going to be unhappy. I did something interesting many years ago, couple of decades. I actually, people look at life ahead. What I did is, I went to the end of my life. I said, I reached a point where I said, now the time when I will part from my body. And then I looked backwards at my life and I said, okay, at that point, when it is time to leave this body, what all should I have been, done, and had, that at that point I can leave stating that, feeling that I lived a complete life. And I actually sat down. I took a piece of paper and write down. It's amazing. That list is almost 3, 4, one by one, those things are just happening. I put it down on a paper. I've never looked at that paper again, right? So I decided that now I'm not going to be craving for anything more. Yeah. I'm just I've already decided this is what I want. And it's a one-time thing. You do it one time and you let it go. It gives, surprisingly, it gives you a very tranquil kind of no wanting anything more in your life feeling.
Yeah. Let's speak about tranquility a little bit.
Yeah.
Coming back to what you said about happiness and sadness and the different parts of your brain that are stimulated by either of the two.
Yeah.
Does there exist neuroscience related to manipulating those two regions? Because I would also assume that too much happiness is also not good.
So the pleasure and the pain areas, they are separate. They are about feel good. All right. Now, the tranquility you're talking about is all about balance. Okay. So in our body, so the brain has neurotransmitters. For example, there's acetylcholine and there's norepinephrine. One that stimulates you, that is responsible for the fight and flight reflex. One that calms you down. Right. For every chemical in the body, there is one which does the exact opposite. And tranquility is all about balance. The universe is all about balance. Nature, if you see, is about balance. The earth moves around the sun and the moon moves around the earth in beautiful, harmonious balance. The tides are in a state of balance. In our body, our chemistry, our hormones, our muscles, if your biceps does one thing, there's a tricep that does the exact opposite. So tranquility is not about more or less. It is about balance. Okay, of having the right amount of everything. So you're right. Just stimulating the pleasure area also can lead to a complete different state of mind. Okay, it can, you can actually become manic with a whole lot of that feeling.
It leads to a hedonistic lifestyle.
Exactly.
I would assume.
So it's just balance. Everything needs to be balanced. And once you get that, life is got to be a state of balance. The word that I use for you, equanimity, is a very nice word, which is all about balancing out. Everything, once you do that and you respond to situations in life the way they are and not the way you expect them to be, right? You accept people the way they are and not the way you want them or not want them to be. You take circumstances in life the way they've happened, not the way you would want it to happen. This kind of equanimity or tranquility or balance, which is directly connected to the neurotransmitters in the brain, directly connected to our neurochemistry, this happens.
A hedonistic lifestyle is one where the human body is constantly chasing one or more kinds of pleasures. For example, addiction to
Yeah.
intoxicants,
Yeah.
addiction,
Yeah.
um, constantly buying new expensive things, like being a
Yeah.
shopaholic.
Yeah.
Effectively, what you're doing is that you're stimulating your own dopamine systems. You're
Yes.
looking for quick
Yeah.
dopamine.
Yeah.
Effectively, another form of hedonism is just doom scrolling.
Hmm.
Constantly going through short content. It's constantly secreting dopamine in your head.
Uh-huh.
But the long term output of having a hedonistic lifestyle is that you're wrecking your dopamine systems, right? In short, can you explain how one is spoiling their dopamine systems by being hedonistic?
Yeah. So again, because there is lack of balance now, all right, uh, you are there are many things in your life, okay, which would actually give you tranquility, balance, like concentration on your own health, like concentration on relationships, like concentrating on a harmonious work-life balance. That will go completely out of twist when when there's an imbalance. You're doing too much of. See, it's like this. I'll explain to you. Like there's a disease called Parkinson's disease. Okay, now there are two chemicals there, acetylcholine and dopamine. Now, what happens in the disease is the dopamine levels fall, but the dopamine levels falling don't create a problem. It's when they fall, the normal level of acetylcholine causes symptoms. Okay, did you understand?
Yes.
So something falls. One would think that falling causes the problems. It's not that falling. It's the normal level of what was balancing out.
This is what people call hormonal balance.
Exactly. Yeah. So anything in excess, anything will cause an imbalance in the neurochemistry of our brain. It'll cause imbalance in the electrical circuitry of the brain. It'll cause an imbalance between the conscious and the subconscious mind. And then you are in a state where you're just not feeling good. You may have everything in the world and still you're not feeling good about life.
Gotcha. So effectively, what I'm gaining as the bottom line output in order to chase tranquility and not just constant happiness is that you need to make life a little bit difficult for yourself in some aspects. Perhaps it's another way of saying challenge is a must throughout the course of life. Throughout the course of life. Now, and if external challenges don't exist, you create the challenges for yourself.
Very well said.
Could be as simple as sticking to your exercise routine, sleeping on time, meditating every day. Something that seems difficult, actually adopting that into your own life. Is that a neuroscience based hack to chase tranquility?
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, can you explain the neuroscience of what happens when you invite these good for you challenges into your life?
So the moment you invite challenges, you're again the balance between acetylcholine and non-norepinephrine. You actually, the moment you invite a challenge, you're putting, if everything is going good for you, now there is no challenge in your life, so your norepinephrine levels aren't high. Moment you bring a challenge, you're stimulating this. Okay,
Norepinephrine.
norepinephrine. All right. Now, in our nervous system, there is also a part of a nervous system that some people refer to as the subconscious, but is actually referred to as the autonomic nervous system. So there is a nervous system which we have control over. There's an autonomic nervous system which runs the body, which controls your heart rate, which controls your digestive movements, which a lot of things are happening in your body which you directly can't control. Yogics can do it, because they have control over the autonomic nervous system, but we can't control our autonomic nervous system. Now, our autonomic nervous system consists of two parts. There is something called the sympathetic nervous system, and there is something called the parasympathetic nervous system. Now, the sympathetic nervous system has been given by nature to us to do what is called the fight and flight reflex. So, when the lion is chasing a deer, the deer has to run for life. So, at that time, what needs to happen? Your blood pressure needs to go up. Your heart rate has to go up. Your pupils have to be dilated. You need more energy, so you need more sugar. Okay, and at that time you can't pass stool, so your bowel movements are shut down. This is controlled by the sympathetic nervous system. What it does, it extracts everything from the body to be able to save your life at that time. There is another system, the parasympathetic nervous system, which does the exact opposite. It lowers the blood pressure. It calms you down. It lowers your heart rate. It converts glucagon back, reduces those levels, Has your bowel movements going well? The parasympathetic nervous system is the restorative system. It restores the body's harmony. It repairs the tissues. Now, what happens is we have both of these. Nature gave us the sympathetic nervous system to be used once in a while only. But we land up using it all the time. That's why you see all modern diseases, hypertension, sympathetic, diabetes, constipation, muscle spondylo, all these conditions are basically because we are using the sympathetic nervous system, which was meant to be used once in a while, every day. So all the modern illnesses that we have are because of overstimulation of the sympathetic nervous system.
Being stressed all the time.
Now, the parasympathetic has the exact opposite. And you know what you have to do to stimulate it? Nothing. Just chill, relax. All right. But we don't do that. In fact, we had done a research project at the Sion Hospital Medical College in the early 90s, where we took our own students as subjects, staff members, and they were made to undergo just simple yoga every day, over there. So there was no question of compliance. And after testing, we found it is completely parasympathomimetic. That means yoga actually stimulates the relaxation system internally, right? Now, if you're too relaxed and doing nothing, you have overstimulation of the parasympathetic nervous system. If you're too stressed, you have overstimulation of the sympathetic nervous system. Again, coming back to what I said, everything is about balance. So you need to have both. For those who are very stressed out, working constantly, only thinking about their work and their job and not having a life-work balance, they have to stimulate the parasympathetic. And those who have everything you said need by creating challenges, by stretching themselves out a little bit, stimulate their sympathetic nervous system so both work in balance. We need both these systems to work in balance to be healthy. Yoga does that intrinsically. That's why yoga is so useful.
Okay. You've effectively given out the biology and mathematics of how one can achieve peace in their human journey.
Absolutely.
So to summarize, basically your brain has a different part of itself dedicated to pleasure and a different part dedicated to pain. Over the course of life, they're both going to be stimulated.
Yes.
Now, human understanding, especially when you're graduating from school or college, is, hey, let's try chasing pleasure. That's how one gets into a hedonistic lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
Because over the course of life, you realize that if I drink this liquid, I'll probably get drunk.
Mm-hmm.
If I smoke this herb, I'll probably get high. And you're constantly stimulating that. Many people get stuck in that loop, and that's what we call addictions.
Yeah.
Of course, can also be placed in the same bracket.
Absolutely.
But life has to be a combination of both pleasure and pain. Now, hypothetically speaking, if you're only chasing pleasure through a hedonistic lifestyle, eventually you won't be able to feel real peace because you're constantly in the chase for external happiness. But the actual goal of human life is tranquility, because life is going to come at you and you need to be able to respond correctly, which will happen out of a tranquil state of mind. And in order to create a tranquil state of mind, there are two requirements. The first requirement is that you have to challenge yourself just a little bit to increase the norepinephrine levels in your bloodstream once in a while or every day. And secondly, to kind of perhaps stimulate that pain part of your brain as well, to keep your brain in balance. And the second key point is ensuring that while your sympathetic nervous system is active in the modern day because of daily stressors, you activate your parasympathetic nervous system as well through processes like yoga, stretching, flexibility-based movements, regular vacations, or simply sleeping really well.
Yes, absolutely.
Good point to end the podcast because it's a pretty heavy piece.
Yeah, I just like to share a little spiritual aspect to this.
Sure.
I once heard a saint talk about what is it like to live a good life? Okay, he asked. And he said, if you have these 6 things, your life becomes worth living. I'll just, share them with you.
Sure.
The first thing he said was Shanti, okay, or peace. Because he said without peace, you can never live a good life. And how does peace come about? Peace comes about by acceptance. It doesn't come about by agreement. You may not agree with somebody, but can you just accept them? It starts with acceptance of you the way you are. Very often we don't accept ourselves the way we are. So first was Shanti, and the base of Shanti is acceptance. Then he said Shakti. So it starts with your body. Okay. If your body is strong, you will be able to combat an infection or a disease. If your body is weak, the disease will win. Second, your mind. If your mind is not strong, people will suppress you, people will make you do their own things. The third thing he said was Anand or bliss. So, what are the difference between Anand and happiness? So, happiness is based on something outside of you. You get something good, something happens to you, you're successful, you do something. Anand is an internal state, all right? It is generated from within. It's not dependent on anything from the outside. So the third was Anand. So Shanti, Shakti, Anand. Fourth thing he said was Gyan. So Gyan is knowledge. What is the difference between knowledge and information? Information is a facts, and there is so much of it, all over now on the internet. Gyan is that knowledge which you can put to good use. For example, the podcast that you do, that is actually knowledge that you're sharing with people. So he says very important to separate knowledge from information, right? The fifth thing he said was sundarta or beauty. He said we are naturally happy around beautiful places. Like look at the studio, it's beautiful. You just enter here and your sort of alpha waves triggered. And there are some places where you go and you don't feel the same. So it's very interesting. He said that, the earth, the planet, if you remove human beings from it, there is not a single ugly spot. The planet is very beautiful. We have messed it up. Okay. So, and if you think of some of your most beautiful times, it'll be on a beach or a mountain or nature. Nature is naturally beautiful. So, starting with beauty of yourself, to your home, to your office, to your surroundings. So, beauty is a natural state. And the sixth last thing he said was pyar or love. And it is there that he mentioned what I was sharing with you earlier, that the true love is that between a mother and a child because it is unconditional, right? There's no expectation.
The rest of the kinds of love are outcomes of the subconscious mind
Subconscious, exactly.
and human conditioning
Human
and societal
conditioning, yeah.
conditioning.
So, but the most beautiful part is he said all these six things: Shanti, Shakti, Anand, Gyan, Sundarta, Pyar. These are all actually internally generated. They're internal states. And when you live like that, okay, when you are like that, the world adjusts around you. No matter what is happening, you remain in that state. So I just found, and I actually found a neurobiological base to all of these things.
I think
All of these are connected to the brain. All of them. It's all about balancing. Acceptance is a state of balance. Uh, you know, uh, when you're talking of Shanti, it is about letting the higher brain have control over the lower brain. I mean, stuff like that. So there is a neuroscience base, but this was from a spiritual guru. I just found it very interesting that if you just be in that state, what I found, the universe around you sort of
aligns in your
aligns
favor.
itself, and the world responds to how you are internally. Okay.
Doctor,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Another epic episode for our neuroscience library.
Yeah.
So just want to say thank you for this
My
episode
pleasure.
and
Yeah.
all our other episodes. We're going to be covering a lot more neuroscience with you over the years. So deeply grateful and appreciative of your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
That was the episode for today, ladies and gentlemen. Send in your feedback, send in guest recommendations, and tell us what you think of these biology specials on TRS. Absolutely love covering biology if it's as entertaining as our conversations with Dr. Alok. Tell us what you like Dr. Alok and myself to cover the next time around. And do tell us what you'd like to see on TRS next. Lots of neuroscience content coming your way, lots of practical content coming your way, even beyond just TRS. What I mean by that is something that will unfold over the next few weeks. So stay tuned. Lots of novelty is coming your way. Thank you for listening in. Ranveer and the team looks forward to welcoming you again.